Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf with your hosts, Denise Russo and Samantha Powell.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. My name's Denise Russo. I'm here today with my friend Sam Powell, and we are so happy that you are joining us this year, 2024, for our series, which is all about happiness. And I'm really happy to be here with you today. Sam, how are you doing?
I am super happy to be here today with you too. And I'll have you know, so I have this little calendar on my desk, and Today the quote on it is, "Be happy, not because everything is good, but because you can see the good in everything." So I loved that. That was the quote on the first day of our Happiness 2024 kickoff.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it really is about your mindset. And that's what we're going to be talking about throughout this whole next several episode series. So last week, if you missed our episode, Sam and I walked through the progress of the books that we plan to go through for the rest of this year. We talked about why we chose this topic. And today we actually are kicking off the first of the books. And so the book that we're talking about now for the next several weeks is this book, The How of Happiness. Well, my lighting on my camera is kind of weird if you're looking on video. Thank you, Sam. Yours is better. So The How of Happiness, this is a really awesome book. It's the new approach to getting the life you want, but it's actually not so new. A lot of what the author talks about in this book comes from science, it comes from data, it comes from tons of research. And what I really loved about this book as we're starting to walk through it together is that it's based on things that are sound that we just don't seem to commonly apply. So Sam, I know that for you, that you've read through the book. We're not reading it exactly together. We're in our own homes reading. And I'm curious about maybe some of your thoughts as you picked up this book, because I had already read it. It was brand new to you. What were some of your thoughts as you got started with this one?
I had a similar feeling to when I started Atomic Habits of like, I think this one's going to be one of those ones that sets the trajectory of my life a little bit differently than what it's on now. And I genuinely, I am a default happy person in general, but there's still just something about this book to really be able to conceptualize it and look at it from like the scientific standpoint is going to be something really I love getting to that deeper understanding of a topic like happiness, like those, I don't know, like our emotions and our feelings. So I'm super excited about that was as I'm reading this, and especially as I read, the introduction and the, part one, and, got into what this book is all about and what happiness is all about. I don't know. I think my life will be on a better trajectory at the end of this journey than it is now, which is great because I already felt like I pivoted with Atomic Habits. So this feels like we're becoming the best version of Sam here, book by book.
I 100% agree. One of the things that I love that I'm just going to call her Dr. Sanja because, friends, I'm not really sure how to say her last name properly.
Yeah, I Googled it. All right. I looked up a video, an interview with her. It's Sonia Lubomirsky.
Lubomirsky. Okay,
yeah,
so
Sonia. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to still stick with Dr. Sonia then. I think that's going to be easiest for me.
Perfect.
Okay, so this author, wow, super amazingly smart. She actually wrote this book and did the research when she had a brand new baby and one bacon in her belly. And so the book is not brand new, but she also walks through some things that might sound somewhat brand new to some of our listeners. One of the things that she says, I don't think any of us would disagree with, which is that all of us want to be happy, yet few of us truly appreciate how much we can improve our happiness and know precisely how to do it. So this book is not just about a feel-good book. It's not just like one of these books that you might get from some kind of motivational self-help speaker. This is from a scientist, a psychologist, somebody who spent her life on the science of well-being. And so I'm really looking forward to learning that part of it. I sit kind of more on the nerdy side, and I like the scientific study of happiness and well-being. And so for me, I'm really excited to share some of the principles and the solutions that she walks through that are super practical. They're just things that we don't commonly apply. And Sam, it really made me feel like over reading this first chapter about all the things that you taught and explored with us through Atomic Habits, because it was the same thing. Lots of common sense things that you just need to do day after day with consistency in order to create good or get rid of bad habits in your life.
Yeah. And she says something just in the foreword before we even get to chapter 1, where she says, enjoying a real increase in your own happiness is in fact attainable if you are prepared to do the work. If you make a decision to be happier in your life and you understand that this is a weighty decision that will take effort, commitment, and a certain amount of discipline, know that you can make it happen. And I like that coming right off the tail of Atomic Habits, right? Because that's the like, how do you do it, right? How do you commit like to this new identity? I want to be a happy person. I mean, that's an identity I carry with me already, but like, I would like to be an even happier version of my happy self. And so like, what does that look like? And knowing that it is going to take some work, it is going to take commitment. And we already know that those little changes, those little things that we do can make really big differences. And this is, like you said, really kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah. It's interesting as we go through this process with the books that we're picking, because you and I are business coaches and we teach leadership development principles. And yet, all of it is really about how to have a holistic and well-rounded life. I often talk about how there's really no such thing as work-life balance. You have a life, work is part of it, and you just need to find the balance in your life in general. And so one of the things that Sonia discusses is that the research that she and the other doctors went through and either uncovered or conducted themselves was about that happiness will not only just make you feel better, but it'll give you a boost in energy, creativity, your immune system. It'll foster better relationships. It will increase higher levels of productivity at work, and it will even lead to a longer life. So when you think of this through the lens of quality organizational and talent management strategies, why would you not, as a business, want to invest in things like positive intelligence, emotional intelligence, the science of happiness? Because all of those things contribute to a healthier environment at work, which leads to productivity, which leads to profitability, which leads to your customer success and whatever your ultimate goals are in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and there's so much research now out there about how, the well-being of your employees, the well-being of people in general results in all of that, right? It results in, what you're saying. And she touches on that right from the beginning here, but I mean, there's a ton of research out there. And I think the better companies in the world, the ones that are really focused on people are trying to do the things that help people and focus on what makes people happy and what brings well-being.
Yeah. A book is not going to change you. Reading a book is not going to change you. Going to a 1-hour class on this topic is not going to permanently change you. You're going to even learn throughout this book that the things we often seek after to give us happiness only give us short-term satisfaction, but not long-term results. It's the same thing. So if you're listening to this and you are someone who is either a leader in your business, or maybe you're the person that oversees even your learning function, this is not a simple prescription of just read a book and suddenly people are happier, or teach a class and suddenly you have higher profitability through happy people. This is about these tiny things that happen over time. Like James Clear said, the tiny things that bring us remarkable results, but they have to be consistently applied. One of the things that Sonia talks about in the book is that 40% of our joy is within our control. So maybe the starting point is to help people understand what is that baseline that we all have. There was some really interesting research about this in the book, but this is not a new age book. this is actually an old age book in some ways, to say that there's a set point that we all start from, but the happiness ultimately is a choice, and it's a lifelong endeavor, because happiness is not based on your circumstances. It's not based on how much money you have. It's not based on the title that you have at work. It's not even based on where you live. She gave some great examples even of different people that she interviewed that came from lots of different variability in their either life's age, their life from their socioeconomic status, and even their life from where they lived across the globe. I remember one time not too long ago, maybe about, I don't know, 12 years ago or so, I had a manager, and he said to me, we were forming a fairly new team. And so we were trying to come up with, what were my metrics as the leader, and what really was my goal. And he said, your objective is to make your team happy. And I sat with that for a really long time, because I thought, I can't make anybody happy. And true enough, I couldn't make them happy, but I could create an environment where it would have been easiest for them to find things like their passions, potential, and purpose, and the things that we talk about with School of Thoughts. And so I don't think that you can ever make somebody else happy. You can't even really make yourself happy, but you can learn what things are within your control that drive happiness. And so when I started reading this first chapter, I was thinking about that manager that I had, because that was the goal that he set for me. And interestingly enough, that was one of the best teams that I've ever worked with. And I don't think that I made them happy. I think that being with them and being around them made me happy. And so maybe there was a little bit of truth to that what you decide to do to sustain your happiness comes from not just what you do, but who you are and who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, I think there's like this underlying theme in a lot of, and a lot of this is really around connection and contentment, right? Like regardless of circumstances, regardless of what's going on, it's what are you doing that's bringing you contentment, that's bringing you, connection to other people. And it's interesting. She talks about, right then. So in this first chapter, this is the question of, is it possible to become happier? I absolutely love the quote from the beginning. I think I'm going to frame it, but to change one's life, start immediately, do it flamboyantly, no exceptions. It's William James. I loved that. But she talks about even the phrases, right? So we called this year the pursuit of happiness. And she actually said, no, I don't like that phrase. And I was like, well, dang it. We got it wrong right from the beginning. But she said she prefers to think of it as the creation or construction of happiness. I loved that, right? Like, it's not that we're pursuing some goal of happiness, right? And this harkens back to James Clear's, right? Like we're not getting to some finish line. And John Maxwell talks about this too, of like people will live on this island of like someday right? Like I'll be happy when I'll see this, when I'll do whatever. So it's not that we're pursuing this nirvana state of happiness that you have to get to. It's that we're constructing a life. We're constructing our days, we're constructing activities of happiness, right? It's that really famous quote about like, it's not the journey, or it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? And like, I love that idea of, we're not pursuing an end goal. This is where, this is what I didn't like about James, where he's like, throw your goals out the window. Not really, but it's that you've got to be doing this day in, day out. You've got to be taking the activities. You've got to be taking the action that makes you happy. There's no end state to happiness. There is, I am happy as I'm pursuing, as I'm, moving through life.
Yeah, I think that it's important that when we're talking about this pursuit, that we not picture that it's this elusive thing that's running away from us. It's this thing that is actually seeking us. And so with her book, she talks about how this is basically a scientific approach to the how to achieve and sustain happiness, because achieving it, she talks about how you can achieve something you think will bring you happy, money, fame, beauty, power, whatever. that's short-lived, and it actually turns out that those things don't bring you happiness. But this also talks about not just achieving it, but sustaining it, which is that other element of, well, how do you keep that going long term in your life? And so she gave a question that I really sat in as I was starting to read the book, which is, how do you make your life more fulfilling? How do you make your life more productive? How do you make your life more enjoyable? And for each of us, it's going to be different. Some people may have joy when they're doing something quiet, or maybe they get their happiness when they are away from work. And yet other people like to be around lots of crowds or busyness, or they like work. Or people like the cold weather. Some people like the warm weather. And so for each person, the contrast of how you get to your sense of happiness, it might be different, but it got me to thinking about one thing that she didn't really go too deep into, but I love that she didn't, and I'll share why she didn't, which is that there's a contrast to happiness, which is suffering. So the opposite of happiness is people who feel empty or unfulfilled, or they lack peace, or they lack security, or better said, maybe they're insecure people. And so when she was sort of describing it, she was saying that the traditional psychology, or you could say therapy, is looking at people that have a problem, and they just look at their past to try to dissect the past. But positive intelligence and this well-being of happiness and this sort of newer approach, I guess you could say, newer within the last couple decades, is the approach of looking forward. So not that you can't look backwards, but you can't stay stuck. And if you want something different, we also talk about this a lot, don't we, Sam, where if you want a different outcome in your life, you have to look at the actions that brought you there, or the inactions that didn't bring you to where you want to be. And those things start from our beliefs around different things, which all start as our thoughts. And so she does go into talking about how psychology, traditional psychology, are, I think, disses. They talk about a disease or disorder or the negative, but this is rather taking off the dis, which is about how do you achieve ease? How do you achieve order? How do you achieve positive, not negative? And so I think that's, for me, one of the things I really have embraced and loved starting this book, because it comes from truly a positive angle. If you want to become happier, then you focus on the things that are positive, not harbor and only focus on the things that are negative, because removing negative versus improving your already state of positive, it's harder to do the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It sort of reminds me, like, and this is the field of positive psychology, right? Which, like you said, emerges in the last 20, 30 years here. And it is the flip side to what you think of as like traditional psychology at this point, right? Where we're healing what is, maybe wrong or hurt or broken or, whatever inside of us. This is what takes us beyond that, what moves us from maybe neutral into, the more positive frames of mind. This reminds me sort of like the difference of, I had a friend yesterday ask me, like, I don't know if I need a therapist or if I need a coach. And it's like, well, if you touch something and it hurts, you need a therapist, right? If you've got a pattern of behavior that you can't seem to heal and move past, right? And it's painful when you get close to it. That's what therapy's for, right? It's about kind of that traditional psychology aspect of really healing yourself so that you can live in a neutral, positive state. If you're in a neutral, positive state, right, that's where coaching comes into play. And so that's why the field of like positive psychology is sort of the basis of coaching when we think about it. And that was what I thought of when we were looking at like the difference, between those two things, which I know like you and I talk about all the time because we're both coaches.
Yeah, it's super interesting what you're saying, because it's like you just described that the therapy side is healing something that's broken. So if you think about you break a bone, you go to the doctor to get that reset and to heal over time. Maybe you go to physical therapy for that. Coaching is like you are not broken, but you want to get stronger. So you go to a gym to take your sort of weaker muscles. They're not broken muscles, but they can get stronger through the aid of someone guiding you through the right exercises. And so one of the things that I really loved that this scientist, this doctor talked about, which is that for major change to happen in your life, a break with the status quo must be achieved. So she focuses on where are you right now and how do we move you forward? It's a question we even ask in coaching at the beginning of every session. Where are you right now and where do you want to be by the end of this hour together? Or where do you want to be by the end of our sessions together? Where do you want to be by the end of the year or whatever that target number is? And it doesn't mean that you are already have the solution to get to the end, but that coaching is going to help you pave that pathway. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about this being a journey and enjoying the process and the journey. But in the journey, it proposes that you're moving forward. You're never turning around and moving backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. One of my coaching certifications is a happiness coach. Like it is a happiness coaching, which is really interesting. But I thought, the thing that struck me as really different right in the outset of this book and in this chapter, and I think then this sets the tone for really everything moving forward, is her pie chart. And this is the answer of like, what determines happiness? Because the question of this chapter is it possible to become happier? The answer is yes. And it's yes, because what determines happiness? And she's got this broken down into 3 categories. 50% is a happiness set point. And this is it originates from like our biology, our genetics, our baseline for potential happiness to which we are bound to return even after major setbacks or major triumphs. So that's 50% is a set point. You are who you are. This is your default settings. These are your genetics that you're working with. 10% is circumstance. So this is what's happening to you at any given time, which I thought was super interesting. Only 10% is your circumstance. And we spend so much effort and energy trying to adjust our circumstances and then wonder why we're not happy. But it's only 10% of what makes someone happy. And then 40%, which is the whole point of this book, is intentional activity. When you read that pie chart, like this was, I struggled with this pie chart through the entire first part of this book. And then finally, by the time we'll get to chapter 3, I had some breakthroughs, which was good. But when you read that for the first time, what did you think about that 50-40-10 breakdown?
I loved the pie chart because for me, it said that no matter your life circumstances, that's not the key to your happiness and that you can rise above or move around those circumstances in your life. And so if there was a secret to happiness, it isn't that our genetics or circumstances are the key. The genetics you can't do anything about. There's a baseline set point. And if you read the book, you'll even read where she studied twins. And the genetic makeup of different human beings have different set points. She studied people that lived in the same location in different locations. It's your genetics are who you are. Your circumstances are outside of your control sometimes, most of the time. 10% of it relates to your happiness, but it is in our control to look at our daily intentions, our activities. That's what's within our control. And so it's in what we do and how we think that improves and sustains our happiness in life. And so we need to be very careful to scrutinize what are the behaviors and the thoughts, the people that we surround ourselves with, the environments that we put ourselves in. And so she studies what make very happy people naturally and habitually engage in different kinds of activities. And I know we're almost out of time for today. So I thought what I would do maybe is just cover very quickly what are 7 things that naturally, abundantly happy people do? Because this is going to be the starting point for you as listeners and for us as the hosts of this show to walk through what are the things that resonate the most with us. So one thing that she says is that the habitual happy people naturally devote a great deal of time to their family and their friends, and they nurture relationships and they enjoy relationships. So that's number 1. That was number 1, family and friends and relationships. Number 2 was that they're comfortable expressing gratitude for all they have in life. So this is a really easy one. You could stop right now and just think of one thing that you're grateful for today. And if you're having a hard time thinking of even just one thing, there's one very natural thing. It's that you're listening to the show breathing and you are alive, and it's better to be above ground. So that's number two, is that expressing gratitude for all that you have in life, even the things that maybe sometimes make it hard to feel grateful. Number three is that they're often first at offering a helping hand to people that are in need, whether that's a coworker, a passerby. Like, how many times have you ever been somewhere and you're walking and there's trash on the ground? Do you step over it or do you pick it up? If you see somebody that is in the store maybe struggling to reach something on a shelf, do you help them or do you just walk around or past them? If there's somebody at work that really is challenged by something, do you offer a lending hand or do you just say, well, that's on them because that's not my job? Naturally happy people are often the first at offering a helping hand. Number four is that they practice optimism when imagining their futures. So this again harkens back to, in psychology, in therapy, is it looking back at the past of something that's not positive versus being optimistic and imagining a future that can be different, but looking at it from what we like to call the what if with the exclamation mark, not a what if with a question mark. Number five is they savor life's pleasures and try to live in the present moment. Simple things. We actually had a retreat last year that Sam and I hosted, and there will be another one sometime this year. But one of the things we did was we had a session on mindful eating, and it was about savoring simple things. Like, even if you take just a sip of water, could you look at that in a way you've never looked at it before? Like, take a look at the ice cubes in your drink, if you like ice in your drink, or imagine the surroundings and the smells of the things that you're eating. And so they savor life's little pleasures. The next one, number six, is that they make physical exercise a daily or weekly habit. That one is tough for me because I often find myself getting distracted or busy doing other things. But Sam, you really taught me through Atomic Habits how important it is to not just have that exercise machine or weights there, but to verbally say, I am a person I want to be known as a person that is healthy, not just a person that exercises, but what's the result of exercise? And in this case, the result of physical exercise is the result of happiness. The last one, as we wrap up the list, is that they're deeply committed to lifelong goals and ambitions. And for me, this is the reason we created this podcast. This is the reason that we coach. This is the reason we host our signature story retreats. It's so that we can be committed to continuous learning and a pursuit of something in life that drives us closer to our passions, elevates our potential, and really digs deeper into our purpose in life. So with that, Sam, I'm going to pass it back over to you for maybe some closing thoughts on this first episode of The How of Happiness.
Yeah, I'm interested. You skipped the last one. There were 8, not 7. The 8th one, which I'm interested why you skipped it, right? Because the last one is they may become, happiest people do have their share of stresses, crises, and even tragedies. They may become just as distressed and emotional in circumstances as you or I, but their secret weapon is poise and strength they show in coping in the face of challenge, which you have personally done in big ways. But you skipped it. Why'd you skip that one?
I skipped it because I looked at the clock and I said to Sam before we started this episode, friends, I knew we would run out of time for chapter 1. I probably have 10 more pages of notes just on chapter 1. So I really want to encourage you, if you don't have a copy of this book, please go find it at your local bookstore or go buy it online somewhere, or even in a stand-up bookstore if they still have those in the area where you live. That one is really, frankly, the most important one to me, but I was looking at the clock. So let's say this. In our upcoming episodes, we are going to dig a little bit deeper into that. We're going to describe that how by choosing a happiness boosting strategies, the things that Dr. Sonia describes in the book. These are things that what I love about the book is it's not a one size fits all. This is a personalized prescription because it's based on your individual personality, your strengths, your goals, your current situation. And you will be able throughout this process, just like we will be able to do this, hold your own reins to your own happiness based on your own unique values, interests, your own needs. And once you learn the activities Sam mentioned about chapter 3, which will come up in a couple episodes, you'll learn what's best for you. And once you do that, Dr. Sonia says you're halfway there. And that's still only the very first section of this book. Now, this book is not going to just give us the easy answers like she says on every page. This is going to take hard work and effort, just the same as Atomic Habits took hard work and effort. Pursuing happiness takes work. But this, I hope for you, has been a good use of your time listening with us today. Sam, any final thoughts before we close up for today?
I think the only final thought, right, is that this was is it possible to become happier? And she starts off with 40% of what makes you happy is completely within your control. And so I'm super excited to explore how we take back control of that 40%. So very, very excited to keep doing this with you.
Yeah, next week we're going to dive into how happy are you and why. So we hope you'll join us. Please subscribe, and even better if you will share this with others that could get value from it. And if you are getting value from it, would you let us know? We'd love to hear comments from you, and you can share that. Scott will put in the show notes ways for you to reach us. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Denise Russo, and on behalf of my friend Sam Powell, thanks for being here for What's on Your Bookshelf.